This has been something that we've been talking about over the last several weeks, and that is the New Hartford school budget, the teacher's contract. And I have to tell you, since I've been talking about it, other people from other districts and other communities are pretty vocal. I'm at this movie premiere last night, and somebody came up and said, "Do you really think we're sympathetic to New Hartford with all the property values, with all those businesses?" And they just got an extra $733,000. We don't sympathize there. Bob Nole is the superintendent of schools. How does that make you feel, Bob? As other community people in other communities, other school districts, looking maybe with envy or disgust at New Hartford? How do you feel about that?
Certainly, we may be considered a commercial hub within our region. However, when you look at how state aid is funded, it's based on property wealth and income wealth. And when you look at what a combined wealth ratio is, what they use to distribute that aid, one is considered average, and our combined wealth ratio is 0.89. So we are below average when you look at that.
Right.
And when you look at how much operating aid we've received over the years, in the past decade, our operating aid has gone up less than 1%. And we recently had a tax certiorari claim with the Sangertown Square Mall, which reduced that assessment from approximately $85 million to $60 million. And the state aid formula is based on currently based on 2014 wealth measures.
Right.
And so that hasn't caught up yet, and we're drastically underfunded in foundation aid. We actually are underfunded right now, according to formula, approximately $2.4 million in the current year.
And one of the things that you put out a fact versus fiction graph that came out a few weeks ago, and it was said that other districts haven't really been hurt the way New Hartford has been hurt. And while that is true, there are districts that have not been hurt. There are certainly plenty of them out there that have gone through the same thing that New Hartford is going through. Do you agree with that or distree?
Yes, every district has faced some difficulties and challenges since the state came out about 10 years ago with a $10 billion gap. And what they did is they took money away from schools. And that, again, was based on wealth measures as well.
Right.
We lost $9 million over a period of time. We were one of the last ones to get restored gap elimination adjustments. And our loss of $9 million was a lot more than some other districts. So every district has faced some challenges. Ours is unique because there is money from the state called Supplemental Valuation Impact Grant, and that's where we received the $300,000. That happens when you have a large tax certiorari, which has happened downstate as well, or you have a military base closing or something of that magnitude.
Yeah.
The state comes in to assist, especially when there's a tax cap of 2%, which hasn't really been 2% the last 4 years. It's been under 2%.
Yeah.
So there's really no place for an organization or municipality to get that money back.
I want to ask you, where does New Hartford stand right now? I realize the foundation aid, the legislature was able to get some more, not just for New Hartford. That money really that changed the formula for all districts throughout the state. But then there was that additional $300,000 that you received, so an additional $733,000 based on what you thought the projections were made in the governor's proposal. So you get that $733,000. Where does that put you? And I know there are 3 layoffs. Where does that put the district right now?
Well, it's $733,000 in total, but we had already calculated the governor's proposal, which was approximately $124,000. So for new money, post-governor's proposal and adopted by the state legislature, it was $609,000. And that allowed us to balance our budget. It allowed us to continue all programs, maintain traditional class sizes, enhance our school security officer program, and we continue to have all athletics and extracurricular activities. You're correct, and right now we are looking at 3 teachers due to enrollment declines. However, we are still advocating for some additional money out there and hoping to restore those 3 cuts.
So I guess that is part of the confusion. I feel like there's been so much confusion. It's one of the things that was being complained about the other night. So just in your statement here, you say that the teachers are being laid off because of enrollment. But then you follow that up by saying, if we get more money, we hope to bring those teachers back. What is it? Is it enrollment? Is it money? Which is?
We never want to lay off anybody. And through the years, even with the gap elimination adjustment, the lack of foundation aid, the tax or share, we have not laid off one staff member. We have not replaced people through attrition,
right,
and utilized every creative strategy we could. We've exhausted all those creative strategies. We've never tried to harm.
But how will? But my question though is, how will you've said it's because of enrollment? So more money wouldn't change enrollment. So are the teachers being laid off because of enrollment or because of money?
We have enrollment declines right now, which would allow us to do that. However, we value our staff. We have a huge investment in professional development with our staff. That costs money as well. We'd rather have our staff stay with us,
right,
and that would allow us to then, the professional development, the new teaching mentoring program we have a framework for teaching, which New York State has recognized as an exemplary program. We make every effort to retain the talented and highly trained teachers we already have in our classrooms, and it's important to do that. So what we would do if we were able to secure those additional dollars, we would distribute them across those elementary classrooms, lower those class sizes, and then look to the future through attrition, maybe not to replace some folks.
Okay. The first time you guys had a tax cert issue, well, it's probably not the first time, but this goes back to 2014, 2015. There was a claim filed, and you had to do pay a refund of $3.4 million. Who was that for?
That was made to the Sangertown Square.
That was Sangertown.
Pyramid. Yeah.
So that's 2014, 2015. Is that correct? There was another refund though that was $2.7 million.
That's correct.
And who was that made to?
Sangertown Square.
That also was Sangertown. So that was paid out 2014, 2015. Correct?
Correct.
When was the claim filed?
It was probably filed 3 years prior to that.
Okay, so 2011. So you've known this since at the very least 2011. Where's the planning?
Well, again,
I mean, this didn't happen. I mean, you knew it was happening in 2014, 2015.
It's a great question.
And beyond that, I have an addendum to my question, and that is, I think the part of the problem that people are frustrated with, people that are talking to me, is we're just hearing about this quote-unquote crisis. If you knew of this stuff was going on in 2011, I mean, that claim happened in 2011. We're just hearing about this now as a community.
It takes several years for those to move through the courts, and that's been part of our claim with our state legislators. The contemporary funding formulas that are out there right now and the tax cap that's out there do not allow you to set aside resources for these types of things. And there actually have been proposals by the Assembly and by the Senate to allow those kinds of claims to be aided. So, for instance, if you have to pay out $3.4 million, you'd be able to run it through something like a building aid.
But you pay using your fund balance, right? So couldn't you raise the fund balance so that you knew you have money on hand to be able to take care of something like this?
Well, when you have gap elimination adjustment of $2 million taken away from you in aid, and you have a tax cap of less than 2%, where is that money going to come from?
I want to ask you in your graphic the other day that was presented at the Board of Education meeting, you talk about expense and revenue adjustments post-governor's budget proposal.
Right.
So you talk about some cuts, some things that you've done, extracurricular service, external contractual expense. $8,000. So that's a cut, right?
That's correct, yeah. That's a contractual expense we had through an extracurricular activity.
Elimination of BOCES administration tech position and reduction of non-aidable BOCES contracts, $62,500 saved. Restructuring of administrative director position. You've cut a plant engineer, and that's saved you how much, $49,000?
We're restructuring that position, correct.
Okay. How long has that position existed?
That individual's been in the district for 20 years.
All right. So that's 50,000 times 20. Let's say salary's changed. What is that position? And how many schools can afford a plant engineer?
Well, every school has
every school has a plant,
someone that's in charge of operations and maintenance.
I understood, but couldn't that? I mean, if you can rid yourself of that position today, couldn't you have rid yourself of that position and restructured it yesterday, the day before, the year before, the 10 years before, 20 years before? And we talk about putting
again,
money.
We talked about a little while ago about how we try to retain all staff and value.
I understand that, but you've retained all staff to a point now where there seems to be an economic crisis that you needed a bailout from Albany. So if you take that $50,000, which, by the way, what does a first-year teacher make?
Approximately $40,000.
Okay. So you've just added a teacher, and you've combined services of this, maybe restructured the way the plant engineer. I just think that, is there wasted money like this that has existed for 20 years in New Hartford, which has placed you in the position you're in? And by the way, prior to you being superintendent, you were the business manager. What's going on here? Why is this money, like this $49,000 a year, not been taken care of 5 years before, when you knew in 2011 you were running into these tax issues with Sangertown Square? That's a valid question, I think.
Well, I think it's a valid question. However, I think we're looking at a micro
It is, but it's one position. It's one position at $49,000 a year. And if you multiply that by 20, that's a lot of money, Bob.
No, we would still need to have a person in that position. The person has.
So you're not saving 49. So you're not saying 49. You're not going to be saving $49,000.
No, I didn't say we weren't going to be saving.
How much are you going to save if you're going to restructure this? How much do you save on
position, and saving $49,000 this year? But that is a valued position. We've had capital improvement projects over the past 15 years of $19.6 million, $25.77 million, and now currently $12.65 million. That person is highly trained, is a licensed architect, and it is an important position in the district. Every district has somebody in charge of operations.
I understand that, but
there's fire codes that need to be met. There's fire inspections that need to be submitted.
But
that position needs to exist. We're restructuring it at this point.
I have a simple question. Bob. Simple question.
Sure.
You're restructuring it today and saving $49,000. Please answer this question. Why couldn't this have been done 5 years ago?
It couldn't have been done 5 years ago because we have a capital improvement project, and we're able to utilize resources from that to cover this $49,000.
Okay. So you're saying that because of this, you don't have a capital project right now, so you don't need the position?
No, we do have a capital project right now, and that's what we're going to utilize those resources with.
Got it.
And then the individual is retiring.
Okay.
Okay.
Again, I'm confused by that, to be honest with you, but I understand. There were some questions brought up at the board the other day. A letter was read by a teacher, and it talked about the $900,000 gap, asking, are we in a dire situation with a high probability of layoffs, increased class sizes, and reductions in extracurriculars? The graphic that came out said this wasn't true. So the question is, there seems to be mixed messaging. And when you spoke to the union, did you tell them that there was a financial issue and that layoffs were potentially probable?
When I met with consistently every single year when we dealt with gap elimination adjustment, lack of foundation aid, and tax certiaries, I always met with union officials and told them that we would not be having layoffs ahead of just around the same time as when I talked to them this year. We try to be as transparent as possible. So every year, facing those challenges, I was able to share that there would be no layoffs. This year was different. Again, our revenue has been diminished. We've exhausted all creative strategies. So I met with union officials to let them know that unfortunately this year we cannot make the budget balance. A $900,000 gap exists, and we told them there were three things we could do. We could pierce the tax cap, we could have layoffs, and we could advocate for additional aid. And we chose to go hard at advocating for additional aid, and that aid materialized.
What's next year? If Senator Griffo has said, listen, this is a one-time $300,000. If you're in trouble this year, it looks like you're close to signing a deal with the teachers. If you're in
tentative agreement in place.
Tentative agreement, the teachers have not seen that as of yet, and I believe they still have to vote on that.
It has to be ratified by both parties.
By both parties. So the question would be, Lordy, what's next year bringing?
Well, again, you mentioned the $733,000. $424,000 of that is recurring. $300,000 we will look at other avenues. Again, there are things that take place each and every year. So will the retirement system rates go down? Will our interest earnings on idle cash go up with interest rates go up? Will we have retirements and through attrition be able to save some money? So we do that each and every year, and closing $300,000 one-time revenue should not be as difficult as where we were facing $900,000. It's not unique to any one municipality. Every district comes across this from time to time. The state of New York had a $4.4 billion gap,
right?
And they had to close that. I think a school district next to us had $1.5 million gap. So this is not uncommon. It's not the fault of anybody. It's just the normal course of costs. We've exhausted.
You don't believe this could have been prevented?
Could have been prevented if we were getting the extra aid that we should get.
Without putting that aside, because every district's going through the same type of thing. I know the graphic that you put out said it's not true, and that is a proper statement, that not every district goes through what New Hartford is going through, but many do, and many in our area do. You don't feel that tightening your belt could have prevented this from happening 5 years ago, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, knowing even before the tax cap?
We've been doing that all along. We've eliminated 37 positions throughout the years.
When did you realize there was a major shortfall?
A major shortfall once we received our governor's proposal.
Okay, and that's when you knew that things were going to be tough.
Followed our budget calendar and got to the point where we had firm numbers and a governor's proposal on state aid.
I have a listener asking, couldn't the school district put the claimed overpayment to Sangertown Square in a reserve to prepare for the potential?
And we have been able to do that in the past, but again, with the gap elimination adjustment of $9 million, with foundation aid not coming into the school district, and that foundation aid formula, the way it's distributed right now, it's not equal in terms of we're $2.4 million short.
Yeah.
There are some schools that are, again, it's based on wealth measures, property tax,
sure,
income. And there are some school districts where the formula is generating a number, but they're receiving more. And then there are other schools that aren't receiving what their share is, but not to the tune of $2.4 million. There's actually a chart that shows what percentage you are what percentage you are in accordance with the formula. We're on the outer end of 35%, not receiving what we generate according to formula.
I want to ask you one final question, and it's a tough one. And listen. You have a lot of administrators that are making decent salaries, and I'm all for people making money. And if you can make it, God bless you. But as a business official, when you were the business official, and if knowing that you've gone through, going back to 2011, you're having these tax cert issues, going back to 2011 at the very least, knowing this, and you're the business official, and the board came to you and said, our superintendent has 2 years left on his contract. A month and a half before the board election, we want to renew his contract for 5 years. What would you have said at that point? Based on the optics, based on the finances? I know it's tough because it puts it to me, and I don't blame you for taking the deal, but what would you have told the board when you were the business official? Again,
all of our central office administrators are at-will employees. In my case, I was approached by the Board of Education to consider a renewed contract. There are timelines that kick in superintendent's contracts for renewals. We had a relatively new administrative team. We had a capital improvement project going on, and we had fiscal challenges, and the board wanted some advocacy efforts on those fiscal
Were you
challenges.
worried about the optics of what it would look like?
I was pleased that the Board of Education wanted to renew my contract and wanted to continue forward with some of the challenges that we have and finish up some of the initiatives that we had going on.
I want to go over for just a second and just give you a chance to, you have the floor. People are listening. This is an opportunity for you to speak to the people of New Hartford. Obviously, there's a vote coming up in May on the budget, and be one board position that's open. I just want to give you a brief moment to comfortably on your own just speak to the people that are going to be voting coming up in May.
We have a budget vote coming up on May 15th. We have a public hearing on May 7th on the budget. Our budget maintains traditional class sizes and core programs for students. It has new instructional materials and supplies for the grades K through 12 art, music, health, physical education, and library media service programs. We have a new high school elective course called Math for Coding. We have a new novel engineering program whose lessons integrate engineering and literacy in our elementary schools. We've enhanced our school security officer positions. And we have a balanced budget, and we will work hard to take care of the $300,000 one-time revenue next year and maintain all programs and services and stay within the tax cap.
Not easy to do this. I respect that.
Thank you. And
I respect the fact that you took the time to do it. I think communication is extremely important. There's been a lot of a lot of confusion out there, and I hope that this helps. I
hope so as well, and certainly we're going to do our best to get this communication out and do a better job at it.
All right, Bob. Again, I appreciate you sitting through this. Okay. It does mean a lot. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And we'll talk again.
Bye-bye.